Joining us on the Too Legit show is a very, very special guest, undefeated, fighting for Cage Warriors, fighting out of Wales, Ben Ellis. How are you?
Hi, mate. I'm very well. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
No worries. And I've got to ask, how was training today?
Yeah, it is brutal. It's brutal. There's no two ways about it. Um, it is what it is, isn't it? Like, I know there's a big emphasis at the minute around, like, especially like Max Holloway talking about not sparring too much, not taking too much impact. And I think we train smart, but yeah, pretty much every day I come home a wreck. Girlfriend has to get the massage gun out.
Oh, that's actually a good idea. I'm going to have to get my girlfriend to do that for me.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give it to her. She literally does it pretty much every day.
And
So yeah,
so,
fair use to it.
perfect. And you're at the Matt Academy in Wales, are you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Lou Long's head coach.
And
Yeah,
how long
fight
have
out of
you
there.
been there?
Oh god, 6 years maybe, something like
Wow.
that. Yeah, so I started off in an amateur boxing gym. Um and then yeah, pretty much got straight into MMA then with Lou from that. So yeah. No, it's good. It's gone so quick.
Nice, and that lost a lot of 6 years. But if you can you remember your first day there, and what was your first training session like there?
Well, it's quite a funny one actually, because I did a little bit of training at Trojan Fee Fighters, which is in Cheltenham.
Hmm.
So Paul Sutherland was the coach there, and I was living up there at the time.
Wow.
So I trained with him for maybe 5 6 months. And then when I came back to Wales, Lou was scheduled to fight Shay Mills, who obviously fights out of Trojan.
Hmm.
So I turned up and said, "Oh yeah, I've done a bit. I've boxed. I've trained at Trojan, but I've moved back to Wales now, and here I am." But Lou being Lou, he only heard that, "Oh, I trained at Trojan." He was signed to fight Shay already, so he thought that I'd been good mates with Shay, and then would be telling him everything about Lou. So the first 2 months, I just got my ass handed to me on a daily basis until I figured out I was sticking around, and then it was all good after that.
And you're undefeated, obviously. Before you said you started the boxing gym, you're undefeated in your professional career, and you're undefeated at amateur as well. And do you remember? Take me back to your first amateur fight. Do you remember what you were feeling, what the event was like?
Yeah, to be honest, I remember it really well. So obviously coming from a boxing background, like I've never once regretted having that as my
Hmm.
base. Um, I feel like up until recently, like when you've seen some really high level boxers like Peter Yan, Cody Garbrandt, obviously McGregor, it kind of wasn't mentioned in MMA. I think it was because boxing was such a rival sport, like
Hmm.
financially. They were trying to steal that attention. So you'd very rarely hear commentators on the UFC and things talk about boxing. But like obviously making no illusions about it, I knew going into MMA that people were going to be kicking my lead leg. Obviously the grappling, jiu-jitsu side of things. So I'd done a few months at Trojan. I've been at Lou's for maybe 6 months or so. And then somewhere in that time frame, he just said, "Look, do you want to fight?" And I was like, "Yeah, 100%, I want to fight." Um, I know I've got a lot to work on. Like boxing's a great base, but obviously there's a lot of holes missing. And he was like, "Yeah, don't worry about that." He's like, "You're good to go." Um, so I was like, this was via text. So I responded to him being like, "Oh mate, I don't know. Like I feel like I'm picking it up quick, but I really don't know if I'm ready." And he just goes, "Mate, don't insult me. Like if you want to fight, I'm the one who says when you're ready." And he's like, "And I know you're ready." So I was like, "Yeah, say no more then." So they scheduled to fight me. And then I loved it. I wasn't particularly nervous or anything. Obviously, the first fight, my game plan was sprawl and brawl. Nobody take me down, and I'm just going to box a lot. But it shows the level of coaching at the mat that now I'm probably more known as a wrestler slash grappler than anything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, as I say, I was hooked pretty much from day one, and then yeah, it's been all fun really.
Nice. And then how did that compare to your first pro fight at all? Was there a larger crowd, or was it just the same mentality?
Um, I would say it was different in the sense of like no disrespect to the guy that I fought first at pro. It was a fight that kind of everybody knew I was going to win,
Hmm.
and that's kind of where I think the pro game gets a bit ugly. Like there is not so much in MMA, especially compared to boxing, but there is that element of building a product, and the fight is the product. So maybe the first handful of fights they're giving people where they know he's going to look good. Because when they offered me Brad Evans when I made my debut against, I didn't want to do it. Said, no, give me somebody good. And no, I'd say I don't mean to disrespect Brad. I know Brad. I do quite like Brad, but I'm sure he'd be the first to admit that he doesn't go into fights necessarily looking to win. So I said to Luke, tell him no. And he just said, mate, like, this is what it is. Like, sometimes you just got to play the game. So to be fair, like, the whole COVID situation's kind of done me a favor, because I've kind of skipped that step. I had, obviously, Brad, the second fight was a decent step up, but nothing to shout about. And then for my third one, then they had to chuck me in with somebody far more experienced, which was perfect. So yeah, it was different in the sense of I was expected to win, whereas in the amateur one, nobody knew anything about me. But I always kind of think like a fight's a fight anyway. So pro, amateur, whatever it is, you're locked in a cage and you're having a fight, so it doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And you said before that you're sort of seeing yourself transition as to a wrestler. Now, if I'm correct, did a bit of digging on your Instagram, and if I'm correct, did you play rugby when you were younger?
Yeah. My uncle was a pro rugby. I was stitched up, mate. My grandfather was a pro boxer, and my uncle was a pro rugby player. And my dad, he played first class rugby before the game went pro.
Wow.
So literally, I had no choice. I was getting pulled in all directions, playing everything. But yeah, no, I did do a fair bit of rugby when I was young.
Do you think so how did you manage to transition from rugby? You obviously said there's boxing and rugby your family, but how did you manage to transition from rugby into MMA?
So I was always doing boxing alongside rugby, but it was one of those. I never competed much in boxing. I was training all the time, but I never really competed, just because I was playing rugby at quite a high level. Like nothing to shout about, but like, you know, in like the regional, in like playing for the Ospreys age grade and things like that. And then I think it was my mother that said it. Like, she was just like, honestly, do you even like rugby? Because she's like, you don't look like you do. You look like you know, you're pretty okay at it. You know what your role is. You do your role, but like, I never really see you smile and stuff. Whereas when like, she'd never go to the boxing gym, but when I talk, because obviously my grandfather was the one that trained me boxing. She's like, when you guys are talking about boxing, when she sees us training in the house, she's like, literally, like, your face is like, you're proper enjoying it. But then boxing didn't quite take it for me either, because like, obviously there's no grappling. Like, it's a brilliant sport, but it's a limited sport in the sense of you've got two fists and that's it. And then I found out what MMA was, and I was just like, here we go. That was that then.
Nice. And do you think maybe rugby, is there any way rugby sort of helped you in MMA, maybe with the wrestling or just the training or anything?
I think the strength work for sure. Like, jiu-jitsu guys hate to admit it, but strength is a factor.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that and when you play rugby, actually, I don't want to make out like I was some class rugby player, because I wasn't. Like, I was decent, and that was about as far as it goes. But we used to do like the analysis sessions. So if you're not working hard, if you miss a tackle or whatever, that's on the big screen, and you're gonna have to answer for it on Monday. So like, it did kind of give you that like accountability where you got a graft. So maybe that, but I think I had that anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, if you're willing to get into the cage, you're not somebody who generally needs to be worried about accountability. So yeah, the strength work, and that's probably about it. Maybe you're so used to physical contact from the tackling and stuff with some massive guys as well. Obviously, rugby players are huge. So maybe that, but not too much.
Fair enough. Well, that's pretty good to hear anyway. And I know obviously you're training through the week. You don't have a fight booked, Jack, but if I'm correct, you want to fight in March. So are you sort of, if you're expecting an opponent in March, are you sort of treating your training at the moment as a fight camp, or is it just you're looking at it as training?
Yeah, I'm fully in fight camp now. Like I say, the coaches at the mat play hell with me, because like, they know that if there's a show, it's say the Cage Warriors dates are like March 18th, 19th, and 20th. They know that from like January the 1st, I'm hammering it. So they'll rein me in until somewhere between 8 and 10 weeks. But it always, to be honest, it always ends up being, in my mind, I'm hammering it from 10 weeks, and then they're reining me until 8, and then they generally let me go then. And it starts to get really brutal with the shark tanks and things. But yeah, I'm in full fight camp now, because I'm pretty sure they will get me matched. It's just been a bit of a nightmare so far. I've been a bit of bad luck.
Yeah, but have you received any offers at all, or do you have any sort of opponents lined up for you, or you're just sort of waiting?
No, we've had quite a few names, to be honest. So some guys are saying about they're injured. Some guys are saying just outright saying no. What was it? There was one guy I called up, the Cage Warriors didn't want to do for whatever reason. Maybe they thought we'd meet later down the line, when it's closer to a title shot. So I just said to Luke to say to them, ask the other guy first, because I'll say yes, whoever it is. So now we're just waiting on somebody else to say yes, because I know I'll say yes, whoever it is.
Yeah, it's a good attitude to have. And, you spoke about a lot of people, some turned down, but do you have someone in specific that you just want to fight, or are you just at that stage where, like, you know what, I just kind of want to build up the resume. I don't really care who I fight. I just want to win.
Yeah, the latter, to be honest, because like I said, it's only 3-0. I kind of like, I've got a little bit of a bump because I beat Kingsley Crawford in the last one, who was quite highly ranked. And then because of the amateur stuff as well, I think that, again, gives you a little bit of a boost when you start going pro. But other than those two factors, it's only 3-0. So, like, I'm just trying to think of a random name now off the top of my head. I'll go Aiden Stephen. I think he's 8-2. So say now I start chops in Aiden, and he says, mate, you're 3-0. So for him, that's a lose-lose situation. Like, if he beats me, it doesn't look anything groundbreaking on his record. But then if he loses, it looks awful. And to be honest, I can't really knock him for that. So for that reason, I'm happy to fight whoever. And then maybe when I get to, in my head, probably 6-0, 7-0, maybe 5, like, that's when I can start really, like, attacking the top people. Like, obviously, Aiden Stephen, James Hendon, Jordan Vasenich, Paul Hughes, Sharia, those guys. And when my record is 5, 6, 7-0, then they can't use the card. I'm not saying they would use the card anyway, but they couldn't use the card if there's nothing in it for them.
Yeah.
And then it's a proper fight then. So yeah, I'll keep my mouth shut till about that time, and then things will get interesting then.
Do you see yourself as 3-0, or do you take your amateur fights into account and you're like, you know what, I think I'm 11-0 in my head, or is it you just see yourself 3-0?
You know what, probably 11. To be honest, like, no one's asked me that, but it's a good question. It's a good thing. Because again, you're in a cage the same way you are at pro. There's a slight modification of the rules, but not too much. And a lot, especially the older guys, they wouldn't have had amateur opportunities anyway. They would have just gone straight pro. So in a different day and age, I would have done the exact same thing. So then why wouldn't you count the amateurs? Especially when I think after I got to about the last couple of amateur fights, we were outright insisting that I was only going to fight on someone's show if they brought in somebody who was top 15 in the UK. Just because I remember, like, at one point this promoter was like trying to match me with a guy who was 2-0 when I was, say, I think 7-0, and it was like, mate, nah, like, I'm not going to fight some guy just to fill out, just because apparently he's a ticket seller. Like, bring in somebody good. So the last 2 amateur fights in particular were, we'll say, really, really high level fights. I think both of them top 5 in the UK.
Wow.
So yeah, I probably would count all of them.
Fair enough. And you never know, because you see people in the UFC like Khamzat Chimaev, who's 9-0. Sean O'Malley was 12-0 before he lost to Cheeto. So that is, even though you haven't had that many fights, it's still technically, anything's possible, and people should just fight everyone. That's definitely,
yeah, I think so. Especially, like, depending on what your base is, like, because we've seen it with wrestlers, haven't we? Like, the guys who've got really extensive wrestling backgrounds tend to pick the rest of MMA up so quick that they can go to a higher level quicker. Like obviously Shemaev, like John Jones, like DC was what he started MMA at 30. And I think by like 33, 34, yeah, he's a world champion already.
Same with Couture.
So yeah, no, that's interesting.
He started at 34 MMA, I think, and then he became heavyweight champion and then light heavyweight. So
nuts, that, isn't it?
I know, it's nuts. And obviously I can tell from the accent and the love of rugby, you're from Wales, of course. And do you sort of feel like when people think MMA in Europe, they maybe think of like England or like maybe Poland, like with the champions in the UFC. So do you sort of think that Welsh MMA goes under the radar quite a lot?
I think probably 2 or 3 years ago, yes. But I think now it's really, really quickly starting to change. Like obviously you've got my coach Lou fighting for Bellator, bringing ice to Wales, Jack Shaw, Brett Johns, Jack Marshman, John Phillips, Corey McKenna now as well. But like in particular, like the guys that have fought there, they haven't just fought and done nothing. Like Jack Shaw's that performance of the night. Brett's been involved in some wars. Like I know he's gone to Bellator now, but he was 6-2 in the UFC. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like he turned up, had 2 or 3 fights, lost them and left. Like it was only the very like top guys that beat him. Obviously Mason Jones had his fight with Mike Davis the other day, like absolute war. So yeah, I think if that is the case now, it's not going to be for much longer.
Definitely. And do you, obviously you've got lots of goals yourself, maybe become champion, of course. Do you have any goals for Welsh MMA as well as yourself? So when you walk in the cage, do you really feel that like you represent Wales and get sort of patriotic about it, or is that something you not think about?
I gotta be honest, I think I must be a prick. I'm dead selfish. Just because if I know for a fact now that if there any Welsh featherweight was doing well to the point where people thought he was going to beat me, the first thing I do is call him out. Like I've already done it in the past, where people are like, "Oh, no, build them up, like let Welsh MMA flourish," and I'm like, "Nah, I can't. Like I can't, not at my weight."
Fair enough. It's like a selfish sport.
Yeah, it is. Like when obviously when Welsh guys fight outside my weight class, always want them to win, rooting for them. But yeah, I just can't. I can't have it in my weight class.
Fair enough. And is the goal, is it to get to the UFC, or nowadays we see the rise of other promotions? You've got Bellator One rising, they're bringing a lot more money with sponsorship. So is the only goal for you UFC, or you'll just see where your career goes?
Yeah, definitely not just UFC. I'll probably do the Eddie Alvarez thing where sign a contract, play it out, and then say, right, who wants what, who offers what, and then go from there. I don't know. It's just the UFC is definitely the best promoter to this point.
Yeah,
but it's just a name on a floor. Like the job is to fight in the cage and win.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. Definitely. And obviously, let's say there's lots of avenues to the UFC, like many different ones, but the 2 ones that I find really interesting are Dana White's Contender Series and The Ultimate Fighter. And if you had to pick one avenue to go down, which one would you choose?
If I had to choose, I do Contender Series, but I don't like either of them. Just because I think the reality TV show is full of shit. Like, as in not just that one, but like any reality TV show. Like, with clever editing, they can make it seem like whatever they like. So I don't like that. But then even Contender Series, I don't like that either. Like, they're just gonna bring in say 8 fighters, so 4 fights, and then just try and tell them that they've got to go for the knockout and fight wild, just to maybe get a contract. I'm like, I don't like it. Like, their job is to fight and win. And I didn't like it when is it Brendan Loughnane? Is that how you say it? Loughnane?
Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not
sure either. But he fought on Contender Series. He beat the highest ranked featherweight in America outside the UFC, and he beat him. And Dana White wouldn't sign him because he took him down in the 3rd round.
Wow. And
I'm like, mate, get a grip. Like, you can't just try and like bully people into swinging, with the hopes of maybe getting a contract. Like, that's That's not what it is. It's supposed to be about hit and not be hit, and the most skillful fighter win. Obviously chasing the finish, but I mean that was a dangerous fight. That guy's now in the UFC. So yeah, I don't like it, to be honest.
Fair enough. And does that sort of make you feel, every time you step in the cage, does that sort of make you feel pressured to get the finish, or it doesn't really matter?
No, it doesn't matter to me. I want to finish when I fight.
Yeah.
Just because, I'll be honest, it makes me sound psycho. But when I fight in the cage professionally, I literally imagine it's a street fight. Just because, like, in its purest form, that's what it is. You're having a fight in a cage. I call it an honorable fight. So no one's going for the nuts, no one's going for your eyes. But other than that, it's a straight scrap. So yeah, I like to pretend that it's a street fight and then just go for it that way. And obviously the purest way of winning a street fight is to spark someone. So yeah, that's what I think of. Definitely, but in terms of in terms of promotions being impressed, then nah, could care less.
Fair enough. It's a good attitude to have. And a final question, you're with Cage Warriors, and let's say if Cage Warriors decided to have an event in Rome, have it in the Colosseum. If you were in the Colosseum and you had to fight someone, what weapon of choice would you choose and why?
I reckon I would either go 2 swords.
Because
I've seen did you watch Spartacus, Blood and Sand?
I haven't actually seen it. No, I've Gladiator.
Oh, mate, good. But Gannicus was my boy, and he used to go 2 swords. So I reckon that, or if there was no weight classes for his proper gladiator style, maybe I'd have to go spear, because I'm a midget. I'm only 5'8". So if they stuck me in with someone 6'2", he'd hit me long before I hit him, so I need a spear.
If you throw it and you missed and you've got nothing else, you're done for.
I wouldn't throw it. I'd jab him. Aim for the neck, hit like an artery, and I'd be laughing.
Fair enough. I love that. And if you want to shout out any sponsors or shout out anyone, anything, the floor is yours.
So I got Tatami Fightwear. Obviously sort me out with all the kit, especially for fights, so that's great. Essence of Nature, sort out my CBD. And then there's a couple of, they're more friends than sponsors, but obviously they sponsor me as well. So Sinclair Group, Jay Lacey Groundwork, David Spear Commercials, Man Island Finance, who I actually work for. It was very nice of them to sponsor me. And I always panic at this point, so I feel like I've forgotten someone, but I don't think I have. I hope I haven't.
We can always add it.